everybody, and welcome to the Efoil podcast. Ew.
Good to be back.
Good to be back. I'm here with Walt Dickinson.
That's right, Windy Walt in the house. I don't know why I said that. I don't even use my Instagram.
So stoked to have Walt in town. We just got done doing a little pair wing session, very little pair wing session. And this is the first time, actually my second time doing a podcast over this streaming thing, that it's not in person, but it does feel very familiar now having Walt sitting beside me in the studio. So that's really cool.
Yeah, good to be back in the studio. I was hoping to be here a lot more this season, but it's amazing how long that hour and a half drive from the West Coast feels.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the problem is when you come into the city, like you're going to drive from the West Coast to come into the city, and then who knows what we're doing. We're all busy. There's traffic. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I'm getting a lot of buzzing here.
Yeah, you're buzzing. Probably.
Am I?
This.
So who do we got coming on here, which I'm excited about?
Yeah, Chris, right?
Chris Reynolds. He's the senior product manager of Flite, and I have no idea what that means.
I mean, it sounds important.
Let's see.
It could be, he could be an engineer. He could be a sales guy.
We don't know.
He's got a sweet beard. We know that.
Hey, what's up?
Hey guys, how are you?
No volume.
Let me see if I can hear you now.
And again, guys, how are you?
And how are you?
Good, good.
It's good to see those flight boards there in the background.
Oh, these little FLITElabs, there we go.
Yeah, a little FLITElab action. All we do is we see pictures. That's it these days. So
yeah, no, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. That's
nice,
for sure.
Man. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Absolutely.
Yeah, we were trying to do an intro, and we had a couple technical difficulties, so we're back on it again. We were trying to shoot the shit before you came on, but it didn't work out.
We just fixed tables, and now we're rolling. So let's just do it.
That's perfect.
Fantastic.
Cool, man. Introduce yourself a little bit for the people that don't know you, like me.
Yeah, awesome. Like most people, probably. Look, Chris Reynolds, grew up with a love for water sports from a super early age. I definitely loved the ocean, but where we lived, my parents had a boat up on a lake. So
I'm sorry, I threw you like straight into it.
Straight in. All good. So yeah, definitely like love for water. Grew up boat up on a lake. Hit water skiing really, really hard at a super early age. I think it was about 6-7 years of age. Really enjoyed that. Windsurfing came along, and it was really nice not to have to hassle the parents to tow you behind the boat. So I hit the windsurfing super hard. Really loved that, and just sort of went from there. Like as I grew up, windsurfing progressed to hassling my parents to take me down in the ocean. We were a good hour away from the ocean. And just pushed really, really hard with that. And then just through my life journey, like any single water sport that's come out, I got into surfing probably a little bit later than I should have, like mid-20s. I was always waiting for the wind and looking at these perfect waves. I sort of reflect back and go, why was I sitting there waiting for these, this wind where we had this perfect wave surfing? So I probably picked up surfing mid-20s. Kite surfing came along. It started, would have been like 99, 2000.
Damn, super early.
Super early, like 2 lines, safety on your wrist with a line halfway up one of the lines.
Sketchy.
So sketchy. I think and none of us knew how to do it. Like there was no lessons back then or any guide. It was just like, I think almost at the start, we were pretty much doing hot launches down the beach and, some crazy stuff. Then 4 lines came along, and that was like a revolution. It was great, but constantly like I've always been my entire life a tinkerer. Like I love getting in the shed. I love building stuff. Like even when the 4-line kites came along, like the bar pressure was so brutal. We all ended up with tendonitis. So we were like rigging up bungee cords to the bar, just to keep that bar pulled in, all that sort of stuff. And then through the journey, like I've always loved the kite surfing, the windsurfing. The surfing I loved, but I only ever loved it if I went somewhere like on a boat trip to the Mets. I spent a lot of time. I ended up moving down the coast, down Torquay, so Bells Beach area, southern Victoria. And it was like I had a garage full of toys, like anything that could get me on the water, I was into. So supping came along. I immediately got into supping, got me away from the surf crowds. I always had a bit of a, going out with 50 guys and battling for waves, coming from windsurfing and kite surfing when you just get so many waves without battling for it. And so supping came along, got me away from the crowds, but the boards were always just too big. By the time I shrunk down to a board, I kind of liked you were sort of up to your knees in water and you may as well be on a short board.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So that sort of came and went. And then, like most of us, we saw Kaileni, out in the middle of the ocean bombing these swells. And I'm just like, oh my God, another new sport. I could just see my wife going, oh no, more toys in the shed. I didn't jump on it straight away. I was pretty flat out with work. And so probably 2019 would have been, I'm pretty sure it was winter, so it would have been mid-year. I picked up a foil. And once again, like a couple of guys had picked up foils and no one was doing it really. So there was no go out in tiny 1 foot, whitewash and, make sure you jump on your front. Like there was no guide at all. So we were like, oh, clean 3 foot, like trying to drop into these waves and just getting roosted. And I reckon I spent 2 weeks going
prone foiling.
Yeah, prone, yeah. So
Yeah.
I reckon I was like 2 weeks in just going, man, I'm never going to get this.
Because that's around the same time that wing foiling started coming around, right? 2019.
Yeah, so jumped on that as soon as it came out. Got the original duotone with the boom where it kind of sunk and you got pushed over the thing quite regularly. But picked that up coming from windsurfing. Picked that up super quick. But I think when you flagged, they were the ones that just used to rip your arm out when you flagged on a wave, and I just don't think the tech was quite there. So I was still probably proning more than anything. And then I still loved my kite surfing when the conditions were right in the waves. So it's probably proning I did more of. And then once the tech on wind foiling got a little bit better, I think the units came out with the handles. And, they sort of flagged a lot better and then hit that pretty hard as well. But I think even before then it was, would have been, look, I wasn't long into foiling when I came up with the idea for the amp. And I was literally, all our brakes that we used to foil at were like a low tide only brake. And it got us away from the main surf crowd, but there was still a lot of male riders there. And I was loving the, not being out with 50 people, but being out with 10 people. But then the wave there was so awesome at mid-tide, but you had no way of chipping in. So I'm like, I'm going to go home and buy a jet ski and talk my friends into towing me in, so then we could just foil and have this thing all to ourselves on mid-tide. And I sort of got home and I had a mate with a jet ski and he's like, you don't want a jet ski. It's a pain in the ass. You got to launch the thing. You've got kids. You're going to be gone for half the day.
Yeah, I have that issue. And any of our listeners will know that jet skis are a pain in my ass.
Yeah. So I was super keen, but it was the ship was running out of room. So I knew e-foiling. I actually used to kite surf with DT, who founded Fliteboard.
Okay.
And I knew e-foils were here and knew the tech around that. And I'm like, man, I just got to mount a motor higher on the mast so, there's no drag and, battery size. Like I built...
So did you start with Flite exclusively on the FLITElab side?
I have, yeah, but that sort of happened later down the track. So I was doing this in my shed by myself in 2019. And so, I sort of went home with this idea after, the tide had got too full and I've been put off the jet ski idea. And I'm like, well, it's just a smaller motor with a way smaller battery high on the mast and just give you enough, I didn't know how much thrust I needed. But I was guessing like 10 seconds of thrust just to get you onto these fat swells and up you get and motor will be out of the water. So I got super excited about this idea. And then as I was driving home, I'm like, oh, what about a jet in the board? Like that'd be even cooler, but I'm like, I don't think a jet's going to be powerful enough. And so anyway, I went home and doing what I always do. I just started researching the crap out of it. And I found back from 2017, it had already done an e-foil. It must have been a prototype with a motor high on the mast. And
Lift.
I'm like, yeah, Lift had. Yeah. They never bought it out. But
Mike told me about the prototype they'd done and they did it and they tried it out and they're like, I just don't think this is it. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah.
And so they closeted it, right? Like they put it back in the shed, and obviously full circle with foil drive and what we're experiencing now, right? It was brilliant.
100%. And I think probably they probably came from, I think they just literally adapted their e-foil, and, like back then e-foils were 25, 30 kilos, like coming from a prone trying to jump on something 30 kilos, you just can't throw them around.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sort of parked that idea with the motor on the mast first, because I'm just like, oh, look, maybe I can set up a system that does both, and it's a more an ecosystem. And then I just went to work. I was just like, okay, I'm building a jet. Like, I've got to be able to do it. So I started researching how to build jets and did a huge deep dive on all of that.
So what's your background prior to this?
Yeah.
You've been building.
Yeah,
no, that's cool. I was doing this stuff, and I was like, I'm just going to build a jet.
Yeah.
Are you an engineer? Or
No, I'm not. I'm probably a wannabe engineer. I probably should have been an engineer. Coming out of high school, I actually was very into mechanics and cars. And I worked for a race team for a little while, doing fuel injection systems and turbochargers and all that sort of stuff. I sort of grew up with the whole boat thing. My dad's not that mechanically minded or doesn't know anything about electronics. So I was sort of really fortunate. He was always like, well, mate, it's broken. If you want to pull it apart and try and fix it, go for it. So he really encouraged me just to, I love pulling everything apart. Even if it's working, I like to pull it apart just to see how it works. Like my mum would walk into the kitchen and the microwave would be in a million pieces. She's like, what have you done? And I'm like, I'm just seeing how the microwave works. So I just always had that curious mind. And so then got into cars pretty hard and all that sort of stuff. And then I just had just a moment of clarity where I'm just like, we're driving these stupidly quick cars. I'm young. Like, I just could see the writing on the wall that, someone who's super young with a little bit of an ego when you're young with cars and driving 800 horsepower cars, it's just not something that's going to last. So I jumped out of that. And then I had a passion for originally, and it comes from my dad. I was very into music, and he had a sound recording studio. So I was quite into being a sound engineer. And so I started looking back into that, going, okay, well, maybe that's sort of, a career path I could do. So this is super early 20s. And then I happened to get my foot in the door at an editing facility for vision. And I'm like, oh, sound engineer, vision editor, like, give it a crack, I'll try it. And I guess it's pre-internet. So I got this lucky break where I just got completely deep-ended being an editor. And I like what I do. Like, once I've got something that interests me, like I'm all in. So it was, I didn't want to spend 10 years becoming a senior editor. I wanted to be a senior editor in a year. So like, I just went hard at it. And did very well for myself very quickly. And then in no time at all, I'm like, I'm not going to work for someone else. I'm going to start my own company. So I built up a post house. We did special effects, animation, color grading, design, editing for film and TV. And I loved it. It had awesome employees. I loved the special effects side of things and the editing and the creative side of things. I loved building up the building. We built this awesome building where all the computers were in one room, and you could like patch any computer to any room and move the edit suites around. And we ended up with about 15 employees and had a ball doing that. That lasted 13 years. And then, as having a young family and that, working too hard, I'm like, I've got to move down the coast and get back in the water, like I'm not spending enough time in the water. So I sold that off and knew that I could freelance edit. So I built up a rig that I could carry around, beautiful edit suite. And I did that for a little while, but then I just got bored. I'd sort of got to the top of my game and just like, I needed something new. So I was down the coast and my wife's like, we'll just come up with something new. And I'm like, okay, well, going back to my roots of when I was young, I always wanted to invent something like, what can I do?
Let's lay on a jet ski.
No, yeah. Well, before that, I was going to restore classic old cars and make them electric and, go down that path. And I started investigating all of that because I love building batteries and love all that stuff and the tech. I built drones for a while. And this was probably pre-DJI and all that sort of stuff. Like, I was importing stuff out of Germany and building up drones. But, oh, man, those things were so scary to fly. They were huge and, it was like you're on a death wish, hanging big cameras off them and the things were weighing like 10 kilos.
Yeah.
And so I didn't end up pursuing that. And then designed a wetsuit, like I'm always in wetsuits in Victoria because it's freezing. And then COVID hit. And it's the same time I started foiling, and trying to deal with the factory with the wetsuits was just getting increasingly difficult with COVID. And that's when I came up with the jet idea, basically. So yeah, it's a different career, I guess, like bit left field, but like suddenly I was super excited again and super passionate, working late into the night. I built a massive test tank down the side of my house, bought myself, good 3D printer, taught myself CAD in a weekend and just went nuts. I built hundreds of these things. And I just didn't know how much thrust I needed. So I was literally building them in a box and I was gaffer taping them to a surfboard and just paddling in the flats going, how much paddle speed is this giving me? And I'm like, oh, it's not enough. So I just kept going and kept going. And I ended up with about 18 kilos of thrust. And I'm like, I reckon this is enough. So I just bought an off-the-shelf prime board and got the router out and I glued this jet into the board. I sort of spent a month in the shed. No one saw me. Wrote all the software for it, which I'm a terrible software writer, so it took me so long to write the software. And then my super close mates who knew, what was happening, I was getting patents at the time as well on it all. And then
was this also pre-Flite? Like this is your own project?
Oh, this is my own project. Yeah, way pre-Flite.
Shit.
So this is 2019, 2020, and so I still hadn't thought that it was going to be a business, but it was just like something to entertain me in the meantime. I'll never forget the first day out. Like all the surfers had left, we'd gone down in this break mid-tide and a couple of my mates paddled out in prones knowing they weren't going to catch anything. And I'm paddling out in this jet board and, I already had the paddle assist there and I'm like, oh man, this is awesome to paddle out. And we're out there and, they're like, come on, try and catch this wave, And I hit the button and the thing shot out from my chest and I'm getting dragged by the leg rope. And my mates are going, woo! And I'm like, yeah, I think we've got enough thrust, So... I was stoked. Like it was a complete fail in one way, but I'm like, so back, I spent the whole night reprogramming it so it had like this acceleration,
It was like 0 to full thrust. There was
it was just bang just on. Yeah.
I love it.
And so then the next day we went out again and sure enough, like there was a lot of things that were wrong with it, but like we were catching waves we just couldn't catch. And then the other thing, there was a few things that I was really like, in the journey of, all this time I spent trying to make a jet work and learning about stators and impellers and all that sort of stuff, which was an awesome journey. I was just thinking about the end goal. Like now I was like, no, I think this is going to be like a real project. And I wanted to, coming from foiling and all the different sports I do, like I'm really, really into the user experience. So I wanted this thing to feel as close to a prone as possible. So, my first goal was to build a jet that fits in, like at the time, most prones were around 4.6. They were 3 inches thick. So I'm like, this jet's got to fit in a 3-inch board. Like I don't want it any thicker than that. And then I'm like, well, what if you want multiple boards? You don't want, to buy a jet board for each side's board. So I'm like, this thing's got to be a cartridge that you can pull out. And, swap between boards. And then I'm like, maybe I can design this board so like you don't have to use the cartridge. You can just go out there and foil till the tide's too fat. And then you come back in and you throw the jet in and you go back out again. So like all these ideas just started rushing into my head. And then it's like, okay, I've got to make it compatible with like the Mast version because, there's advantages to the motor on the Mast versus the jet, and vice versa. So suddenly it became this like massive mission to build this ecosystem that just, works for everybody. And
you're like, you started the project, you're like, it feels really complicated. How can I make it more complicated?
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I'm going to design this thing that's never existed and pack it into this really small high performance board. And now I'm going to figure out how to make it a removable cartridge that I can swap out with like 5 different things. I understand why it's not to market yet.
That is, well, yeah, absolutely. In that whole journey, it was 2022. And I'm like, okay, I got to do a cap raise. Like, I got to get this thing to market. I've run a business before, like, let's do this. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go up and see DT up in Byron. Byron's a place I've always loved. I actually got married up here, spent a lot of time up here. I'm like, good excuse to go up, just to get a little bit of sun. It was winter.
So is that where you
at
are
the
now?
time. That's where I am now. Yep.
Yeah.
And like, seriously, just went up there just going, this doesn't compete against Efoil. It's completely different. I just want to go and see what, like the challenges with manufacturing, all that sort of stuff, like getting it to market. Like I'll go and talk to DT, like, he's an old mate, like he'll be open to giving me information. So I came up here and literally listened to DT for 4 hours. I just lost an earpod. Listen to DT for 4 hours, talk about, all the dramas and manufacturing and like how hard it was. And I'm sitting there going, oh man, like I'm about to turn 50. Do I really want to start this?
He was trying to turn you off.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I reckon.
He's
I reckon
like,
it
oh,
was a
no,
ploy.
dude,
He
it's a really
doesn't.
bad idea. It's gonna be so hard. I don't know these manufacturers. Can you show me those drawings again?
Yeah, you're spot on. At the end of the conversation, he just like, I really love this idea, and I love your passion for that side of things, the surf foil side of things. So, why don't you come up here and do it with us? And I was kind of a bit caught out. I was like, I don't know why, but I hadn't even thought of that concept. And I was just like, oh, yeah, okay. Let me go think about that. So I sort of walked out of the building and like, I always, I've run businesses in the past with my wife and she's my sounding body. And, I sort of rang her and I went, do you want to move to Byron? She hates the cold. She's like, yep. I said, we could do this project with Fliteboard. She's like, are you kidding? You should do that. I'm like, great conversation. Cool. So
sometimes it just works out,
Sometimes it just works out. So over the course of, a year, they were flat out. So we sort of negotiated a contract on how it was all going to work. And then I came up to Byron, basically. So, moved in with Flite at the beginning of 2023.
Damn,
Access
so not
to
that long ago.
Oh, so yeah, and then in the first year of Flite, like it was flushing out the idea. The engineers were like, they were going through a massive growth in the sense of all the products they were innovating on. So they were all pretty flat out on Flite, on all the Efoil stuff. So I was just chipping away. Then I got my, really into the foil design side of things and the Mast and the UX of all of that and what we were going to do. So there was a lot of pre-planning there. We prototyped just, proof of concept, the cartridge and how it was going to work. So it was a pretty rough prototype, but it worked beautifully. And so then it was a really deep dive on board design, the Chrome board design. I'd already designed the boards for the amp boards, but, it was great having, working really, really closely with Adam and a group of local foilers here. Because I'd been doing it all off my own back and I was the only person writing it. I love getting feedback from other people. So it was really, really awesome. Adam writing at the level that he writes at.
The clips of Adam are great. So it gets us all pretty frothy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he has a habit of doing that. And it's awesome being out there with him. I mean, it's pretty humbling, at the level that I fall at. You go out with him, and he just, charges.
What's your favorite aspect of foiling?
Look, I think the thing I love about foiling is I've got this sort of take on any sport where, if the sport's super easy, I feel like you outgrow that sport quite quickly. If the sport's super challenging, then, like windsurfing's a really good example. Like, I windsurfed for 40 years and never got bored of it because it's such a challenging sport. Surfing's probably similar. Kite surfing, I'm not bored of kite surfing at all, but the conditions have to be like, cross off, 8 meter or less, at least overhead, and you just don't get those conditions that much. I'm not into mowing the grass. So foiling I like from the aspect that I'm not very good at it. So I've got a long way to go. But it splits into so many different disciplines, like you get fun out of downwinding, like I still really love the prone. I really love winging. They're all different, but they're all the same. You're all using the foil and they all complement each other. So I see it as a sport where I don't feel like I'm going to ever get bored of it. So I really like it from that sense, whereas all the other sports I've ever done, it's like a one discipline sport. So I really love it from that aspect. I love the technical side of it, being someone who just geeks out on tech stuff. So it's kind of like that, match made in heaven. I'm just like, oh my God, like a geeky sport that's like cool at the same time. And I just love the...
Well, we think it's cool. I'm not sure too many other people actually think it's
cool. No.
Only
foilers themselves.
So cool.
Yeah. Well, it's like those friends that, like I've got some friends who, really, really good surfers, and they're sort of looking at it going, yeah, it looks a bit, I don't know, it just doesn't look that great.
Cookie out there, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And you get them into it, and they're like, especially that
pump. Man, I was ripping. He's like,
yeah. And I said, look, it just feels better than it looks. And they're like, yeah, but that pumping thing, like, it just looks so bad. And you get them into it, and like now they almost don't surf, and
that's funny because anybody that walks into the shop, I'm like, we do kiteboarding, we do wing foiling, we do the electric hydrofoil, and we've got it on the floor. and like, oh, is that the thing that you like you hop around? I was like, wow.
It's actually the one that you don't.
That's
But
like, yeah, that is the one that you don't. But
Yeah,
it's not all about hopping. But it's funny that that's all they see is like that's the
yeah, yeah,
thing that you pump around, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%. But hey, look, it gets you to where you need to get to. So,
Yeah.
just that journey. And then it's also, look, it's getting busier, it's getting more popular, but I really look at the, like surfing and the way a lot of surfers are, like they might not have surfed all week. They go out, there's 50 people out there. They're like, well, I haven't surfed all week, but like I really deserve a wave here. And there's only so many waves that are coming in. You can only have one person per wave. You really need to, stay in the pocket to enjoy yourself, and for it to all work. So the actual mechanics of surfing are already against you. Um, and like I love surfing, like it's awesome, but battling that crowd, like you have more frustrating sessions than you have great sessions. Whereas foiling, you have two, three, four people on a wave. If you're not happy about that, you pull off, get to the wave behind. You've got so much more of the wave you can use because you can go wide on the fat section. You can go, into the pocket. It just suddenly opens up this case. And that's why, like every foiler you meet, you get a brand new foiler you've never seen down the beach, and your local, there's 30 of your local crew there, and everyone's so welcoming. And that's what I love about the sport. And that's what I always got with kite surfing and windsurfing. I could travel windsurfing and, go to WA and go up to Nalu, and, you'd rock in and no one had ever met you before. And, that night you're having beers with everyone. Everyone's your best mate. So
Yeah.
I really love that about foiling, and that's what I'm used to. And so all my surfing friends, they're just like, why is everyone so friendly? And I'm like, well, because we're all getting our bucket filled. We're out there, we're getting 2, 3,
exactly.
4 kilometers of waves.
It's not the scarcity thing, right? I think that's
it's
the
not
big
the
thing with
scarcity.
foiling, the amount of, because again, we don't have to have that perfect overhead slide off, with the 8-meter kite conditions to go have a good day. Like
No,
in conditions that people would just blow off, you can go out and get a good session. So it just all of a sudden, especially when you add a foil to all of the disciplines you just talked about,
yep,
I mean, it's usually like there's too much session time, right? Like you're like trying to figure out when do I take a rest day, or like, because it's just hard to not be out on the water as much as it allows you to be, right?
Well, today I didn't know what to do.
I was lost. I was confused.
I was like,
yeah,
should
yeah.
I go parawing? Should I go kite foil? Should I?
Downwinder?
Yeah,
What do you
I was like, ugh. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna sit here.
Yeah,
do?
look,
No,
it's
just the
just
shortest parawing session.
Yeah.
yeah. And it's, look, it's got, my friends that I got into proning, like they've never had an interest in kite surf. They hate the wind, like hate it. It's just like the evil of all evils. And now they're all winging, and they're almost like going, oh man, there's no wind today. And I'm like, yeah, but it's perfect and offshore. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm just waiting for the wind, So it's
How
like
things
suddenly
change.
the brand, it's just changed, and they're blown away by the fact that they can foil in the morning and foil it in the afternoon when the wind comes in, and they're on the water so much more now, and they're all just losing their mind. So it's I think, it's just one of those sports that's just come along and just really opened up a lot of people's minds, that there's, other things to just surfing.
You're tapping into the future right now, right? Like all this stuff you're designing with FLITELab. Foil Assist has really kind of had its moment this last year, I think. Efoil was always around, but foil drives, what that was able to do, and what people are
100%.
utilizing it for, and how far they pushed it, right? And then seeing you kind of piggybacking on that, obviously parallel design. I'm
Yep.
sure you're more tied into the nuances of who designed what when because you're down there, but this is obviously the future, and we're looking at Gen 1. So, I think maybe talking a little bit more about like, yeah, how do you see your products coming out? What are the applications? And digging
Yeah,
a little bit more into
100%.
those.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those things, and I'm hoping people use the tools for the right reasons. Like that's my main aim. Like I use, like I could go to a crowded break, and instead of proning, I would instantly grab the amp board simply because I can sit 50 meters, 100 meters wide of everybody. And like it's awesome. Like you walk down the beach and there's 100 surfers out there, and you can see the people going, you're not coming out there with this. And you just paddle way out wide, and they're like, what's that idiot doing sitting out there? He's not going to catch anything. And then suddenly it's like you've got the break to yourself, and you just hang way out wide. You're in the middle of nowhere, and that's prime. Like that to me is what it's about. Like it's about getting away from the crowd. Like that is the sole reason that I actually invented this thing. Like getting out in the water more often. being able to wing in lighter conditions on a smaller board with smaller gear. I got sick of, wind is a fickle thing. You go out, the wind drops out a little bit, and you're on too small a gear, and you come in and you de-rig it all, and you put on a bigger foil, and you pump up a bigger wing, and you put the rest back in your car, and you go back out again, and then it picks up, and it can be really frustrating some days, and I don't know, I just don't want to be on big gear. I don't want a 6 or 7 meter wing. It's just I'll do it to get me out on the water, but it's not what I enjoy. So it was really a matter of making tools that just help that journey. So the jet board, which I really, really love, it's probably my favorite. So we've got two things. We've got the jet board, which is obviously jet in the board, and then we've got the amp mast, which is very similar to foil drivers, motor on the mast. And so I like it because there's no real confusion on what each one does and what each one does well. So I love the jet for feeling probably a little bit more like a prone board. Like there's nothing on the mast. Once you're up, no one knows you've got it. My first proto I ran for 18 months before anyone knew I had it.
Just you were like, this guy can paddle so fast. Did you see him catch that wave? Like he's like Superman out there, dude.
Just so you know, just a warning. We've been calling it the fart board.
Oh yeah, it's
that's what I have heard that. I have heard that term.
It's the one cheek sneak. It's like nobody knows you've got it.
100%, 100%. Yeah.
Because there is a spot here that it's like 5 minutes from my house, and it is a surf break. We can foil and prone there. It's great, but there's no way I'd take a foil drive out there. Like I would definitely not feel comfortable, and it wouldn't be cool in that environment. You would definitely
100%.
We might, we've established that in that area at the beginning, it was a little bit annoying to be foilers in that surfing community there, but we've kind of pushed ourselves off to the side. We're grabbing waves that they're not, and they understand that we're out of the way, and we've done a really good job with that.
Unless Arlen pumps through the lineup, which is a whole other problem.
But I was thinking I would be like, man, I would definitely take this. I would have no problem taking this jet board, going out the back where the sets are building, and catch them way out the back. There's nobody there. And essentially now I have to pump to get all the way there, and then I can enjoy the wave. And that's I see that application, right?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about foil drive too, right? Is like that ability to get in at the back. Same thing as winging, right? Like you look at that wave field, you see a building in the back, you can get on it early with foil drive. And hell, you put in like 3 or 4 turns before the thing's even set up, right? Like you can line up the peak, and now you're really attacking it like you just pumped way out the back. And I think that really just changes the way your session feels when you have that ability to kind of like line up that first wave and really build some speed on it, and then, kick out to pump or whatever. So super excited to see that thing in action. So how does, because you talk about performance, you're so performance oriented. Obviously weight is the biggest performance inhibitor when it comes 100%. To these things. And that was the problem, right? When we looked at an Efoil, you hop on an Efoil for the first time, you're like, I can't surf this. This is just, I'm driving a school bus, right? And then, as we moved down, obviously like the Lift X came out and foil drive and, foil drive. I think my foil drive rig all set up's like 28 pounds or whatever. So I guess, how are you, how do you guys sit with weight? Where does your battery, sit with weight and how
I've been trying to drag as much info out of the rep here in the States, and he's just giving me nothing. So I'm so stoked that you're here, because we're so friendly. You're just going to let everything go now.
100%, 100%. Nothing to hide.
And obviously, like some of these things you're still working on, right? So no hard numbers, but like how do you approach all those challenges?
Look, we the last of our challenges, we've definitely had some challenges end of last year and this year. So we are delayed. We're back on track now, which is awesome. And everything's locked off. Like everything's going into production. So I have final numbers, so that's not a problem. So here we go.
We're super stoked. Yeah.
I guess we need to get on the order forms now, right?
Yeah. So we've got, let's do a little show and tell, hey?
Oh, yeah.
Stoked.
Yeah, let's see.
Here we go. Jet cartridge.
Wow.
So this, I'm going to talk in kilograms, but we can try and do the...
Looks like a gutter, but it's amazing.
Looks like a gutter. That's so weird.
Love it.
No, it's incredible engineering. I see it too. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that all up, that's got motor, everything in it, all the electronics.
I'm holding
that's 2.2 kilos.
2.2. battery incorporated into it already?
No. So that's
okay.
so then
2.2,
we've got
just the motor and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, because that
Then
would be
we've
crazy.
got batteries, right? So you run two of these to get full thrust, and they just actually clip together.
Oh, are those like, is that like travel size so you can fly
Yep.
with
So
them?
they're travel size.
Look at this guy thinking ahead already. Oh my God. Take my money now. Take all of it. Take it. I want just all of it.
You want all of it.
Just wait for him to finish.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I love the froth. I love it. So they're a kilo each. So you're adding another 2 kilos. So all up, we're sitting at 4.2 kilos for the cartridge that you add to the board. So that's what we're talking. We're talking in pounds. That's what, about
It's like 9 pounds?
Yeah, about 9 pounds. I think maybe 9.5 pounds or something. And what we've worked really, really, really hard on is the center weight of that cartridge when you slide it in the board sits directly over the front foil. So your swing weight isn't affected. Well, you're adding 9 pounds to a board, so obviously it is a little bit, but we really we worked really hard. I mean, I literally went out with dumbbell weights and was just, I was straight up going, weight's going to be best over the front foil, like no doubt about it. But I've got to test it out. So yeah, I'd move it just slightly behind the foil, slightly in front of the foil, and move it around and go, yeah, 100%. Like once you can get that weight directly over that front foil, then suddenly the weight doesn't disappear, but it's so much better. You know, it helps with pumping, helps with, you know, just trimming with all the aspects of foiling.
We found that the heavier our rig is, the more inertia we get, right? You're just like, you're pumping and you're adding speed essentially, because you're pushing more weight. You know, you need to carry more speed to hold that weight up, right? But it does carry.
100%. And then even, you know, like we've found, and, you know, Adam and I have gone back to back a lot, you know, like when you come straight off the Superlight Prone, like the first, you know, couple of waves on this, like you've just got to dial, it's that muscle memory. You've got to dial in that weight. So you're sort of throwing around going, oh, this is, you know, a bit different. But then when I'm doing back-to-back sessions on the amp, like I fall in love with it. Like I feel like I'm turning harder. You know, it sort of smooths out your pitch stability. Like you really start just driving. Your turns might be ever so slightly different. You're not as critical in the pocket, but those, you know, those super hard, you know, pull half a wingtip out, carving turns, it just seems to smooth everything out a little bit. So I really get used to it. And then I go back to the Prone, I'm like, oh, this thing's just too twitchy. But then, you know, after a day on the Prone, I love the Prone. So certainly in, like, I really, really love the amp in big conditions. You know, one, you're not paddling and trying to take this late drop down a, you know, overhead or double overhead wave. You're getting in super early, but then having the weight in big conditions, it's like, I almost feel like if I was jet ski towing it, I'd almost stick the cartridge in, just have that weight. Like it's really, really awesome in bigger waves. So I love it from that aspect. So the jet's great. I like the simplicity. You know, you've got no hands. We have a launch pad, what we call the launch pad. So this thing, that just screws into the front of the board. And it's as simple, it's got all, you know, the metrics on it, what waves you're catching, you know, all your settings, that's the stuff. But it's as simple as just, you know, you hit the triangle and everything's worked out for you and it will just accelerate up and get you onto a wave. And then as soon as you're up, it knows you're out of the water and it turns the jet off. Or we've got the paddle assist. So the paddle assist is the circle and it's just like, oh, I've just, you know, I didn't pump back out because I mucked up or, you know, couldn't quite make it out that far. And it just helps you paddle. So it just takes the ease out of your shoulders, just a really low thrust. And then it's also nice with duck diving. Mind you, duck diving now, especially when it's a little bit bigger, I get a little bit greedy and I just keep hitting the boost and just do these incredible, you know, big, super deep boost duck dives.
Drive, like motor into it and put that nose down and just submarine that thing.
I do not do that.
It's awesome.
That is dangerous.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, I use the boost a lot for that now, especially on a heavy shore break. Like you just boosting under every single wave. I think I use more boost getting out nowadays than catching waves.
Exactly right. It's like the number one use is just getting you through the white water.
Yeah.
So it's on like the front nose of the board. So when you're diving,
so
you essentially just push the triangle and it'll boost you.
Yeah, 100%. So like this is in all our boards, and you literally just click that in.
Oh my God.
And it just sits there.
Killing me, man.
So, and yeah, you just simply tap the triangle. It's all designed. It's going to turn on. There we go. Probably can't see it in that light. it's all designed so, you know, like your muscle memory, like, you know, you're basically just a thumb away.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So, you know, you get,
that's really cool.
when you first start using it, you're always looking down to press the button, but you know,
Yeah.
like putting your keys in the car, once you get used to where it is, you just hit it. Same with the paddle assist, like it's all programmed so you see a little bit of a wave over there and you're like, oh, I want to quickly get to that. So you hit paddle assist first to get that extra speed paddling, and then as you get to the wave, you can then boost on top of your paddle assist and it will just wind it up.
Nice.
Yeah, so it works really well like that. For winging, we won't make it at launch, but we've worked on this new technology that actually transmits through water. So we're actually going to have a little button on the wing. So you can do like a full, you know, you can use like the 4.2 or the 4.6, which is sitting, the 4.2's at 27 litres and the 4.6 is at 34 litres. Full sinker, you know, basically, you know, hit the button, the boost gets going, and up you come.
For pair winging, like essentially all you need is like to get up on foil, sail out, pack it away, and you're just like just like as an assist, right? Because I was thinking about downwinding with it. Sometimes we just don't get chunky enough of swell. I don't know if the boost would get us up on foil on such a small board, but you know, you could add a wing, but you add a pair wing, just a little bit of wind thrust and a bit of a boost, and you're like,
you can change that cartridge out. You put that cartridge in like a 55-liter mid-length. It's like a 5.2 or something, or a 5.5. Now all of a sudden, I'm sure you could almost flat water it with a little bump.
There's probably one there.
Yeah, that one.
There's a 5.0 by 45.
Yeah, can I take all of them?
1, 2.
Yeah,
3.
sure. Yeah, so
this is pretty exciting tech, man. It's really pushing it forward. This is a lot cooler than I thought. Yeah, I thought this was going to be really lame. So I'm really glad. Really glad.
I love it.
Surpassed.
I love it. Yeah. So we've got that.
I'm not on the show as much. We're coming. Saying it's really impressive tech, man, and it's really
thanks, guys.
It's pushing it forward. Like, we see all the potential. Like, I think that was the crazy thing about foil assist. It was like, oh my god, this is the future. This is Gen 1. This is clunky and garage built stuff. Like, what happens when it starts to evolve and look more like this, and what are the things people are going to add, and, you know, building the jet into the board, and these are just incredible progressions in like moving the sport forward and like what we're going to be able to do. Because that's the thing about foiling. You were just saying it. It's about being on small gear. You don't want to be out there on big gear. You're getting off of boards that need the water. The whole point is being on a lean setup that allows you to really move through the water the way you want and start, you know, performing at that level you want to perform at. And obviously this looks like it's kind of the next step towards that.
Yeah, no, it's good. Like I do really love it for winging, especially like I ride the 5.0 45 litre, and we've got a 5.8 at 65 litres. And then we'll fill out the sizes. I've already started designing the 5.4 and the 6.2 and the 6.6. But at launch we'll have the 5.0 and the 5.8. But it's great. You get down there. I mean, you get up in no wind. I've tried to push the limit. Like I went down the other day. I actually went out in the 5.8, so 65 litres. I had the 707 on the front foil, which does have incredible lowdown. And there was guys out on, you know, like 95, 100 litres, 6 metre wings. One guy, I think he was definitely lighter than me. I'm 85 kilos. He was on a 5 metre, but they were all pumping and really working to get up. And I'm like, well, I've got the 65 litre, I've got a small wing, I've got a 5 metre in the car, and I've got a 3.5 metre in the car. I'm like, why don't I take the 3.5 metre out? You know, it's not even blowing 10 knots. And I'm like, how far can I push this? You know, so I went out and, you know, sure enough, got up to my feet. I'm sort of, you know, sunk down to my calves a little bit and hit the button and got up, no worries at all. The problem was the wing was so small, I was literally pumping it the whole time to keep going. So went back to the car and got the 5 metre, and that was like heaps, you know, and the guys were like, God, you were just up the whole time. They didn't realise I had the amp board out. You know, they were off foil half the time and, you know, all of that. And they're like, what do you weigh? And I'm like,
man, again, it's the sneaker. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
No one knows.
You got it, man. That's so sick.
Yeah.
You shouldn't manufacture this and sell it to everybody. You should just have your secret. Keep everybody think you're the greatest foiler ever to paddle a foil board.
Yeah. I've already had a bit of fun with I had a guy. It wasn't a mate, but it was back in on the first prototype. He was out on one of those 11-foot glider mouths, you know, those massive long mouths. I'd seen him in the surf heaps. We always just said, yeah, g'day mate. And I paddled out past him one day, you know, and I'm on a 4.2, And, I paddled right out the back. I would have been another 30, 50 meters out past him. And he sort of, as I was paddling past him, he's like, "Where are you going?" And I said, I'm just going to sit out the back here. He's like, "You're not going to catch anything out there." And literally the moment I finished paddling out, I turned around and just buzzed onto a lump and got up and flew past him. And I could just see him going, "What the fuck?" Like, it was just like... And at this stage, I was really trying to keep it under wraps. And
that's not how you keep it under wraps.
No, funny enough,
well, he didn't tell him what he did. He thinks he's the greatest surf paddler on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the stories I had to come up with, because he literally, he bailed me up in the car park, and he's like, "How the hell?" He's like, "Have you got a new board or something?" And I went, "Oh yeah, it's got a bit of volume in it and all that." He goes, "I can't believe what you were paddling onto." I'm like, "Oh, I used to be a really good swimmer, and just got good paddle technique." And
Michael
like
Phelps
a year later, he found out. And he was like, "Oh my God," he's gone, "I've been scratching my head for 12 months on how you caught that stuff." So that was good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, because I mean, when you're as an avid foil driver, the foil driver is like, you're wearing a neon sign that says, "I am foil driving," as you hippo fart to the back to try and catch a wave, right? Whereas this thing's so sneaky, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly for proning, it has its place. You're definitely not e-foiling back out and catching 30 waves in an hour like you do on a foil drive or like the amp mast. There's no doubt about that.
How much time do you get out of it? Like, what are these batteries giving you?
It's really, it's one of those hard things on, how long you take to get up. You're going to boost for 6 seconds to get up, or you're only going to take 3 seconds, use double the battery power for 6 seconds.
Board and rider size has a lot to do with that, probably.
Board and rider size, wave conditions, all that sort of stuff. Look, you are struggling in a 2-hour session, unless you're falling off on every wave you take off. You're really struggling to flatten the batteries.
In how long?
A 2-hour session.
2 hours.
Oh, damn. Well,
yeah.
I'm done after 30 minutes, so.
Yeah.
Too tired after 45.
You'll get several days in a row without charging them. So, look, I use the paddle assist a lot. I deliberately work the system to try and make sure that, we're, one, from a durability point of view, like I've just been thrashing I'll be out the back just boosting in flat water, wasting battery, basically. So I try and deliberately drain the batteries every session, just so we're getting the maximum amount of, use out of these jets. But so often I get to the end, I'm already done, and I'm like, I've still got 40% battery, so I'm just out the back going boost, 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 boost.
Actually, maybe a better way to ask this is, with the amp mast, how long of a session are you getting if you're like attacking the wave field, like you're motoring a lot to connect waves and whatever?
But is it the same board that you're using?
Yeah, same board.
Same board. So what you do is you replace the jet cartridge.
That's why I said I want to buy them all.
Yeah, the jet cartridge comes out, you put the amp mast on, and then you've got a battery-only cartridge that goes in. Now,
same batteries, but it just is a battery cartridge, drop the same batteries in, or different?
Yes and no. So at launch, when we first launch, which is soon, we're launching the jet, not the mast, right? So the mast we're still working on. I just, want to get the mast right. Wasn't happy with the first mast we did. Went back to the drawing board. We build, same with the amp jet, there is not one thing off the shelf in this thing. Motor, complete custom motor, ESC, complete, every single part. And the amp mast is going down the same path. Tried a few off the shelf parts, not happy enough, which just makes such a longer journey in creating everything. Everything has to be certified. So we've got 2 battery techs for the amp mast. One, we're still using these, so you can travel, and the cartridge fits up to 4, but you don't have to run 4. So you can choose to run 2 batteries, which is not going to give you a huge amount of runtime, maybe 20 minutes. Once again, depending on foil size, weight size, all that sort of stuff. 3 batteries or 4 batteries. Now, 4 batteries, due to its capacity, is going to be heavier, because each one of these batteries has, hard shell. It's full BMS inside it. The tech inside this is absolutely mental, because Flite board is really, really likes to over-engineer the crap out of their batteries. They don't want to deal with battery fires or any of that sort of stuff. So the tech in this stuff, like we can tell if someone's dropped this thing, we can tell if it's got a leak, like we can tell everything. It's got, that's how much tech it's got inside it. We've got this other stuff
Wait, you
inside
can
it
tell
called.
if people have dropped it?
Yep.
I'm gonna be in trouble.
Well, it depends the
They're gonna
G's
send
it
me
pulls.
notices, be like, you dropped your battery again.
Yeah. No, look, it depends on the G's it pulls. And like for certification, you know, you've got to go through this thing to get the battery certified where you've got to drop the battery, you know, X amount of times from 1.2 meters onto concrete and then test it at stool sealing and, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We take that to a whole new level. Like we pass the certification and then we go do like 2 meter drops onto concrete. So they're pretty, you know, I'm like, be careful with your batteries, don't drop them. But you
Don't
know,
freak out if you
accidents happen. So if we detect that the drop is hard enough, we will say, hey, go get your battery looked at. You know, like let's all be safe here. So
batteries are no joke.
batteries are definitely no joke. Absolutely. So running 4 batteries for that capacity is really, really handy. It obviously gives you the options to run 3 batteries or 2 batteries. So really, really great like that. But we're also going to build one big battery. Well, we'll probably do it in a couple of different sizes with capacity. So you just slide the cartridge in, it's one whole battery. And that way you're running one BMS. You can make the thing lighter for its capacity, but you can't travel with it. So you'll have that battery for home that, you know, will give you maximum runtime per weight. And, you know, we should be building a battery that's got the capacity to run for a good hour. And then we'll size down from that depending on what you do, you know, it's just giving the customer the options. So if you want to travel heaps, buy the travel batteries. If you've already got an amp jet, you've already got those batteries. You know, if you want one big battery, buy the big battery. If you want, you know, a smaller battery, but it's one battery and light, buy that battery. Like it's all about options for me. I always like giving the customer the options because everyone rides differently. So, you know, you've got to cater to as many people as you can. So amp Mast run times until we do our final motor, which we're still working on. You know, we're aiming for similar to
more power
competition.
into that motor.
Yep, it's a real balancing act. You know, how much power do we really need? You give people more power, they use more power, they use more battery. So, you know, I think, you know, credit to Foil Drive, they're really awesome guys. They got the tech out there early, and they've learnt a lot. And you know, they've balanced that power versus, you know, versus weight, you know, and people get around it. Like people go, oh, it's not powerful enough, but then they learn to get up with that amount of power. So, you know, it's same principle as, you know, you build a car that's got heaps of horsepower and you know, everyone goes, it uses more fuel. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're bloody taking off from the lights and getting to 100 in 3 seconds. So like, of course it's going to use more fuel, but if you cruise, it probably is just going to use the same. So, yeah, so it's just trying to find that balance. And you know, with all the boards we've designed as well, what works well with those, and you know, all that sort of stuff. Having the battery in the boards, you know, like it forces people to buy our board. So you're not as flexible there, but it gives us the ability to actually, from a performance point of view, hide the battery in the board, have a really nice clean bottom shape, you know, all of that sort of stuff.
Can you use the board without the batteries
like
inserting it?
You can put
100%. Do it all the time. Yep.
Yeah, you just slip a blank in and go, or
all the time
with the cavity.
I'm lazy. I sometimes don't put the blank in, but the blank gives you like another 3 liters of volume. So, you know, it's probably worth putting the blank in, but there's definitely times where I've just gone, I'm like, where's my blank in my van? I'm like, oh, I'll just go out. But yeah, no, 100%. Like, you know, like I've got what we call our raw boards, which is just our straight chrome boards. I've got them in the car, but you know, the 10 seconds it takes to swap a mast over, and sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'll just take the amp board out without the cartridge. So, you know, they're all, you know, like I actually really enjoy riding the amp without a cartridge. Like it's a good board. So
the shape of the board looks really good. I mean, obviously we haven't seen them up close, but seen a lot of clips and videos, and you know, I think it's important, right? Like we've all become pretty attuned to having the right board, and you know, shapes can be very, you know, have a lot of effect on their performance, and you know, just looking at these, the dimensions look good and the shape looks good. You guys got like a pretty flat bottom, it looks like, on most of them, and then
yeah, look, we kept. Yeah,
and
we
coming
kept
to
it
get like a
simple.
product.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Shoot.
Yeah,
I can
because
talk.
when we start to, move into this product, yeah, we've got to be using that board. So that becomes really important, right? So when we're thinking about foil drive, I'm like, you can use whatever. People are like, oh, what do I do? I want the foil drive or lift X, or what are the differences? I'm like, well, look, you can use whatever board you want. You can use, you don't have to stick with their design. So then that becomes really important to having a really good design in your board.
Well, yeah, and then with foil drive, it's allowed me to like hop on other people's rigs a lot and try like different boards that you're just strapping on. I'm obviously like not specifically designed for foil drive, right? We're just kind of
Yep.
strapping these on whatever. Like I've been riding a 5.4 mid length that Frank Foil Boards made me, which is totally made for really parawinging and stuff, but it's worked out
Yep.
great as my foil drive board this winter. But I just tried a trench board for the first time the other day, and man, that felt so crazy different, right? And I think that like getting a compatible board that'll work for everything is super important, because the things you give up, right? Like right now, foil drive, we can pick our foil, we can pick our board, whatever, but we're sacrificing to do all those things, right? There's sacrifices that happen with that compatibility. And anyways, I'm stoked that the boards look sexy because it makes me want to ride them.
Yeah, look, it was super. I mean, look, we just want to perfect everything. You do have to make compromises, but we sort of looked at the overall architecture and just went, like, what's really important to us? Like we can nail a board design. Like, it's not impossible. We've worked super hard on them. We've had lots and lots and lots of riders ride them. And the feedback's just been crazy. Like, I have DMs every single day. It's like, oh, you got a spare proto at work. I'm going out this afternoon. People that just don't want to give back the proto. So, which is really, really awesome.
You can send me one. I'll send it back for sure, 100%.
No drama.
The next day.
No, just shoot me your address.
Yeah. So I know you guys have worked super hard on. God, so many pieces that have gone into this design project, right? Like it's just crazy. And like the FLITElab, such a great name for the brand, because I mean this is a lab. Like the amount of work you guys in R&D you're putting into all these products, because you're going soup to nuts, and that means your foil range too, right? I know you guys have been working on a foil range, which we're super excited to see too. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. So look, working with Adam is just absolutely awesome. Like it has its drawbacks in the sense that he's really, really, really hard to please, but I actually love that. I love it. Like the amount of foil designs we've done, the Mast, we're really on the same page. But trying to develop foil that works for him at his level, but then also works for the mere mortal, was like from the get-go was going to be a challenge. So I worked super close. I had it really clear in my head what we wanted to design. And then fortunately, Adam was on a really, really similar page. I mean, he wants to, bloody carve harder than anybody, and he wants to ride big waves, and he wants to just absolutely rip. And he can pump anything as well. Like this is the problem. I was like, okay, we need a foil that the mere mortal can pump, And so to me, just reflecting on my journey with foiling, I never loved the high aspects. Like I kind of talked myself into loving the high aspects because I could pump around. But then when I was on a wave, I always just never felt like I could surf the wave the way I wanted to surf the wave. So, I look back at all the foils that I've owned, and I look at, the best waves I ever caught, and they were never on a high aspect. And I know high aspects have come a long way, but I still just felt like a mid aspect, or even back in the early days, the lower aspects were just more forgiving. And Adam loves obviously ripping in a wave and can pump anything. So he was more, heading towards the mid aspect as well. So that's where we started. And then I felt like all the mid aspect foils that I enjoy surfing just didn't have the low end. And I just thought, like if we can just bring back that low end in the foil and stupidly low stall speed, then that's just going to help.
By mid aspect, what do you mean by mid aspect? What's your aspect ratio when you're talking about where you guys are designing?
So we're on the high side of mid aspect probably. So we're 8.5 to 1.
Oh, okay.
So, and then, there's lots of nice little tricks you can do. I mean, everything in foil design is a compromise. But, you want the foil to have incredible top end, you lose your bottom end. If you want the foil to have incredible bottom end, you lose some of your top end. If you want the foil to roll like nothing on earth, then you lose other aspects of efficiency and glide and all that sort of stuff. So it's a crazy balancing act. And then occasionally you just get these little wins. So like we really nailed like tip piercing, something we got reasonably early on. We really liked our overall shape. We were quite happy with our aspect ratio of a balance between really nice to surf on with a good roll rate. But then, like we had this really, really nice win at one point in the project on the foil section where we just had this foil section that just had this mental low end. And like we were out in really small waves and we're just going, oh my God, this thing, you can almost stand still on it. Like it's, we're on a 700 square centimeter foil and it felt like, a 950, or bigger. And I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. And then we're straight away going, oh man, we're just going to absolutely crucify our top end. But surprisingly enough, like the top end's actually really, really good. Like there's probably some faster foils out there, but like Adam charges, like solid 8 foot on this stuff and it's just absolutely macking. Yeah, like it moves. And the interesting thing is it allows you to go fast and it doesn't have that too much front foot pressure. It's actually really nicely balanced when you're actually macking. But then as soon as you get out into the flats, it's almost like not throwing an anchor out, but it really wants to come back to its natural speed and it really washes off that speed, which is something we learned in the process, which is just like, we're kind of like, oh, that's interesting. But then we actually realized it was really nice because sometimes, on a lot of foils, when you go too fast, you just get too locked in roll. The ability to just do a bit of a deeper bottom turn and this thing just naturally washes off some speed and then suddenly slows you down and you get your roll rate back and suddenly you just
keeps you in the pocket better too, right?
Keeps you in the pocket.
Yeah, which is like a big problem with those high aspects is like as soon as you hit the flats, you make those big long gliding turns and all of a sudden you're out of the pocket, right? And you're fighting to get back into it.
100%. So it was a bit of an unexpected, but a really, really lovely surprise. And we're like, yeah, this is awesome. Like you can go fast, but it's got this natural tendency. And same with your pumping. Like you come off a wave, macking, and you start pumping and it just loses speed. But then suddenly it will just sit at this speed and it'll pump all day long. Well,
yeah,
not
so
me.
You can send those over for us to try out also.
Sure, no drama.
And all the other things, just send, like the 707 or whatever you said. That sounds
fun. 707. Yeah. 606 is here in about a week, so I can't wait to try that. Considering
so it'll be one line of these mid aspects is what you guys are going to initially launch.
100%.
A 707, 808. Is that the trend?
Yeah, 707, 808, 909, 1010, 1111, 1212. We'll launch with 707, 808, and 1010.
I don't think everybody's super smart out there in the foiling community. Like, we need to make this real simple.
Well, it's coming from that. I mean, Adam being a DJ, he was the one that actually came up with it. It was funny because we were literally sitting around that size and being a DJ and that he came up with, from drum machines and all that sort of stuff, the 707 and 808. So cool. We're like, let's go with this. Everyone's got 850s or thousands and like everyone's got their own little naming convention.
No, I agree. The numbers are out of control. And obviously like you shouldn't be designing to a number if you're looking at performance, but let's be real. I mean, it's within a size range, right? And it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And not all, even, like if you want to label something, I don't know what the other companies do, it was actually very, very easy. We were sitting at, I think, 702 or something. So to add 5 square centimeters, pretty easy to hide in there. So, but even if, every 700 is different anyway, like they foil completely different. It's probably like kites where one kite felt twice as grunty as the next kite and you line them up and you're like, these both aren't really 8 meters. I'm sure this one's bigger than 8. And then the other thing that we learned, and this is something that just comes from my own foil journey, and Adam was all up for it, but I was just like, even in the early days where people were talking about progressive flex in mast and that, I'm like, you cannot have a mast that's too stiff. I'm just like, I was a blanket, like, I just don't believe you can have a mast that's too stiff.
Stiffer the better.
Stiffer the better. And this came from my early journey of, like riding the original Axis 19mm mast and, everyone wanted carbon and I go to carbon mast and go, oh man, it just doesn't feel as stable.
Yeah.
I think I've got a mast around here somewhere actually.
Yeah, more show and tell. Let's keep it going.
More show and tell. Here we go. So
that's right. It's gonna get everybody to watch the
because
YouTube
a lot of
YouTube
video. Of ours are listeners, but our YouTube doesn't do great. But now it will. Thank you.
Here we go.
Oh, super cool, man.
So I did a really looked at every single system out there and just found, pros and cons to everything. And once again, there is always compromises. And I'm like, what are the important things of a connection system? Stiffness, number one. I don't care if I've got to put 50 bolts in this thing. If it's going to make it stiffer than every other mast out there, let's use 50 bolts. Probably be annoying to use 50 bolts,
50's
but
a lot.
50's a lot. Okay.
It's okay, dude.
20
I
bolts.
I'm used to it.
I got like 100 bolts in my rig.
Bolts, duct tape, electrical tape. What else?
Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Then there's the whole, minimizing connections. Like if you're minimizing connections, there's less things to actually move. And that's where, like the monocoque front wings, really, really great from that sense that you're actually minimizing a connection. So you've lost the connection on the front wing, but you've still got the connection on the mast. And then, it's also user experience. Like how easy is it to change, like you come in and you want to change down a wing, like you got to pull the whole thing off, pull the tail off, put the front wing back on, bolt the tail back on, like all that sort of stuff. Traveling as well. Like, I've traveled heaps with, different wings that are that design, and they're fine to travel with, but the more wings you have, they're harder to sort of pack in the bag.
Hard to get them in the bag. As a code writer, like, oh my God, my bag is just like in the middle of it where all those fuselages stack up. Oh, it's so brutal trying to get it to close for a trip.
Well, I ship a lot of them. The boxes for one foil, it has to be this big,
Exactly. So then I'm like, what can we do? And I sort of looked over everything, and I was kind of like, I know GoFoil had done it, but the whole, they're one of the first to do it. So it's a very, very old system.
We're going to have a mallet for your tails?
No mallet. So that was another thing. I hate using mallets, like the Armstrong days, and, even trying to get something off an Axis mast.
Trying to get that fuse out.
I used the concrete.
Yeah, just smashing your tail on the concrete. Well, they did have that like titanium tip on the fuse, right? So you could like hit it on something hard.
You could hit that on anything as hard as you want. Yeah. So I just went to the engineers, and I sort of had it in my head. I'm like, I don't want a mast connection. I want to minimize the connections. I want to be able to rip a front wing on and off without having to take the tail off. I want to be able to travel. And it's kind of like reverse engineering, like a lift or a code or something. So we've lost the connection because we've obviously got that in the mast. This is a lot shorter, so we've got a longer tail than what a GoFoil would use. So as far as travel goes, like this is way smaller than the width of a board, so it's nice and easy to drop in a board bag. And then making the connections super stiff and small and nowhere, we just ended up going, well, the engineers here are like, why don't you just use titanium? I'm like, titanium? That's going to cost a fortune. But, like at the end of the day, it's never going to corrode. It's the stiffest material, as far as metals go. And it's never going to wear. So, the fitting should outlast the mast, basically. So then the next challenge was, like I'm speaking to we've got some crazy engineers in here, and they don't, they don't necessarily get foiling. So, they rely a lot on me, and I do annoy them a lot in all the ideas I come up with. I'm like, why don't we do this? And they're like, Chris, that's physically not possible. That's not how physics work. I'm like, come on.
You heard of quantum physics?
So they were like, well, it doesn't need to be a tolerance fit. And to try and, so if you look, credit to Armstrong in the fact of doing something different. And the fact that the tolerances that they reach in their connection system to make it all stiff out of the factory is crazy. Like, they do really, really well to make that thing fit as stiff as it does. But then you need a mallet. And then you've got the risk of wear and tear and the thing getting looser over time. So the engineers were like, well, if we've got a decent bolt system that produces enough newton meters, then the less face that we have, then the more contact force you can have, and you don't have to hit your tolerances as hard. And then we actually make it a loose fit until you put the bolts on, and then the bolts are what take up the tension and make it a super stiff connection. Our wing, if I grab a wing and drop it on, our wing's actually really loose, right? And when you do the bolts, it falls off. So, and then you're not actually wearing the fitting at all because you're not mounting this thing on and off either. So
You can just get enough stiffness through the bolts using titanium bolts too, I assume. No stainless.
So it's not actually, the bolts don't stop the wing from rocking. The bolts simply pull the force down onto these 4 faces that are our tolerance faces. And look, we did a huge amount of testing on it. Then, Adam, who just, does more turns and is so fussy with flex and all sorts of stuff. And we proved out the system. Like it's super solid, like really, really, really solid. And it's solid from, like we've got masts that are a year old and wings that are a year old. And, you put them on and they're as stiff from day one out of the shop as they are, a year
So
later.
assuming your tails are like a lift tail, like a one piece, right?
No, at launch, we've got a carbon fuse. And then we've designed in a nice tail where it sits really nice and flush within that tail, which allows, look, we might do some mono tails
No,
in the
I'm a
future.
huge fan of being able to change your tail out.
But,
Yeah, totally
being
agree.
able to change your tail out, but also shimming,
Yeah, and
we've got a
shimming.
really, really, really nice shim system. I don't have a tail in here at the moment. So
I saw Caleb riding, I think, a flight system with a Takuma tail or something.
yes, yeah. So yeah, once again, keeping it, if people want to run different brand tails, knock yourself out. Our shim system's a flat system. Our tails is a flat system. So we're trying to make it as compatible as with many brands as we can.
Awesome.
We're all up. Same with our boards. The amp boards, like bolt on whatever foil you want. Like it's not about us going, you've got to use our foil and you've got to use, like the way we want you to use our foil is because you love our foil, not because you're forced to use it.
Well, as soon as you send it, we will let you know how much we love it.
So yeah, at launch, we've got 3 stabs, a 125, a 140, and a 160. And they're shimmable. So, if you're someone that wants a little bit more front foot pressure, like we've kept it simple. Out of the box, you put in the neutral shim. It's how we ride it. It's how Adam rides it. It's how a lot of us ride it. But if you're someone that wants their mask further back in the box and more front foot pressure and shim it, vice versa. Some days, when the conditions, sometimes you might change half a degree shim, depending on what you're riding or board or all that sort of stuff. So it's just giving users that flexibility.
And the foils, the mast, the front wings are closer to production, just like the jet board.
Yeah. So the mast is going into production as we speak. The foils are already in production. Well, the 707 is. We're just refining out the 808 and 1010. Boards are all in production. Jet's going into production. Batteries are getting certified. So that's basically where we're at. Now, something could trip us up. We're looking really, really good now. Definitely had. It's been a funny journey because we've definitely had our QC issues, which everyone gets, but I feel like we've had more than our fair share. And all the engineers are super excited. They're like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is so frustrating. I just want to launch this thing." And they're like, "No, you get QC issues before you launch. This is like the best ever because you get to put in all the processes to sort them out." And the testing we've done, like we've like a lot's changed at Flite with the acquisition over the last 12 months. We pumped out on the Efoil side of things, we pumped out a lot of innovation, very, very quickly. And, that's worked in the past. And then last year we had a few hiccups. We just got, unlucky with QC issues. And so now we've got a lot of extra procedures put in place for any future products that we launch. And FLITELab's been caught up in that. So our testing now is like so much greater than what we've done in the past. So I'm happy. Like I've been thrashing this jet for like 8 months, like just absolutely giving it hell, throwing sand up the inlets. Literally the other day there was a shore break that was good, good head high, if not higher. And I literally took my leg rope off. There was no one around. And I was literally setting the thing off over into the sandbar, just going, I've got to be able to break this thing. I've said it over 10 times going, I'm going to come back with a broken board. You do all the destructive testing at work where, you're pulling masts off boards and working out how many kilograms, a mast breaks at and all that sort of stuff. Especially like our mast, we've done, this is an ultra high modulus mast, solid laminate, but it's like 13.5 mil thick. So to create a mast that thin, but that stiff just took, like huge amount of work and a huge amount of ultra high modulus built into it. But, you know, we were kind of concerned that, you know, that thin, because ultra high modulus can be more brittle as well because it's so stiff. So, you know, we had to do a huge amount of, you know, how many kilograms this mast breaks at, you know, in both torsion and flex, all of that sort of stuff, which is the stuff everyone does. But, you know, it's a matter of working out, you know, where you put those values. Like, is the mast good for, you know, 100 kilos, 180 kilos, 250 kilos? You know, like you don't know. So real world testing is great as well. You know, just throwing it into sandbars and running into reefs and all that sort of stuff. I'm the crash test dummy.
What sizes are you going to come out with for the Mast?
At launch, we've got an 82 and an 87.
82 and 87.
Yeah. And that's because everyone seems to want to measure their mass differently.
Right.
So that's base plate to middle of the fuse.
Cool. I'm stoked on that. I mean, 82, I'll take the extra couple centimeters.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Like we made them all. We made 77, we did 80, we did 82, we did 85, we did 87, rode them a lot. And we just fell in love with the 82. It just felt like just a really, really nice balance between.
I think it's the perfect size, right? It's like the in-between where you're getting enough mass length that you're able to lay down turns harder and not worry about your tips coming out as much, but you still have all the travel, you know, where it's like you can paddle it out in shallower reefy areas, right? You put a 85 or a 90 centimeter on there, it starts to feel a little tippy, and then obviously it cuts down on like how shallow you can paddle out. So yeah, 100%. It seems like 80 is kind of like the sweet spot.
Is that the same for the foil assist?
No, the foil assist we've gone at the moment. We're sitting at about 85.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just slightly longer. We know from our 87, our 87 is so crazy stiff. So we know we can make it stiff.
Well, and
so
you got the pod, you know, like you need that extra mass length because like
need that little bit of extra.
Even at 87, like you still only have whatever a 72 is what you're actually surfing on before the pod or whatever the number is, depending on like, how far down are you putting the motor on the mast to really nerd out?
That's a very, very tricky one. So yeah, still playing around with that. Just finding that balance between, you know, appealing to the masses. As high as possible. It definitely, I would like it as high as possible.
I mean, you're ideally, I guess, want to have multiple. Like there's different skill sets. I don't know where that lies.
We're building the motor into the mast, so
we saw that. It looks amazing.
Yeah, so you know, we're working really, really hard. You know, once again, it comes back to those criteria that I had with designing a foil. Like it's like what's really, really important for a motor on the mast, you know, and we've got a list of that criteria. You know, like safety is number one for us. You know, we're really fortunate with the electronics guys that we've got here and already built into that launch pad that will be in the front of the board. That launch pad knows exactly what the board's doing, but that launch pad can tell if you're falling. You know, it knows which way the board's pointing. It knows how flat it is to the water. It knows the acceleration. It knows everything about the board, so which is great for our future metrics. Like we've got all this future plans of what we can record, you know, with things like how many G's you pulled in a turn and all that sort of stuff. So
what about I think your G measurements are whatever they are, it's more.
Well, sometimes it feels like I'm gonna fall, but I'm not.
True. But in the case of, you know, like if you look at a motor on the mast, you know, like you're not carving when you're motoring out. So
no.
So if you've got a bit of a carve going on and the motor's about to come out of the water, we know those angles. So we're going to actually stop the motor spinning.
Cool.
So if you happen to, you know, not let go of the trigger or any of that sort of stuff, we know what's going on. And also with, you know, like we can tell if the motor's spinning in the air versus spinning in the water. Like we've got all that tech, you know, already with the jet, we've worked out that tech. So as soon as that motor comes out of the water, you know, we will have, you know, probably user programmable because obviously people go in and out as they're trying to get out. But certainly if that motor's come out of the water and the board's at a certain angle, that's us going, okay, prop stop spinning.
You've shot it out, you wiped out or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the lean angles
foil
too
drive,
much.
See it shoot by you and the prop's still spinning.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't want to duck dive with it because it's got this like latency. Like the moment the remote disconnects with the controller still on, it's got like a 3-second delay.
Bro, no risk, no reward, man. You gotta you want to get that wave or you want to get worked.
I turned that off.
So we're putting a heap of effort into that. And then, you know, performance, you know, like at the end of the day, like we've got this guy in the States that designs all our props and he's just an absolute freak. Like what he does with prop design. And from the, you just say, like, my motor's this powerful, I want this amount of thrust, tell me what RPM I've got to achieve, and design me a prop. And like, he does it first go every time. Like, it's just crazy. So we've got that on our side. And then building a custom motor, we can do whatever we want. So we really want to try and reduce that drag. So, if you are pod dipping, then it doesn't feel like you're hitting the e-bikes. How much we'll achieve, there's a pretty big challenge there.
That was the biggest thing I noticed when we got to demo the Lift X, and the pod difference was the biggest difference I noticed between the two. Was just how much less drag I felt when that pod hit. Just again, leaner, longer. It's
built
definitely
into the mast.
Built into the mast, right? Like all that
Yep.
made such. It kind of like took it from like the pod being this thing that I was like, this is an insurmountable challenge. Like it will. I mean, I can feel a little piece of seagrass on my front wing. This pod will always be like having a kid hanging off your ankle, as you're trying to like surf if you hit it. Where like I realized like, oh, they're going to design through that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point you're going to dip your pod and you're not even going to know you did it, right? And that's pretty sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's challenges there. So like we've got what we call the Ultra L2, which is kind of like a Lift X, I guess, but our motor's down the bottom. We physically build it into the fuse. So that motor, like a foil drive motor is sitting at 63 mil in diameter. It's not just the diameter of the motor, it's also the wetted area. So length matters as well. So it's a balancing act. The bigger the diameter of the motor, the more torque you get. So once again, if you shrink the diameter of the motor, then suddenly you're going to make it a lot longer. The lift motor is 55 mil, so they have lost a bit of diameter there, but obviously fairing it into the mast has obviously helped them a lot, but they've got a lot longer motor, so it's a lot of wetted area. Plus, safety-wise, I don't love the idea of having a motor hanging miles out the back of the board. Or out the back of the mast, sorry. And then, once again, it's compromises. Our motor that we have in the Mark Newson's 40 mil. So, like, that's really small. But you can't get the torque out of a 40 mil motor without running a gearbox. So then the gearbox, because of the RPM we run at, has to be a titanium gearbox. And they're not cheap. Like, they're just not cheap. And they create a little bit of noise as well. So, but then if you go and ride like an Ultra L2 in the waves, like, being a fuse that's like this big, like I can pull off a wave with that thing unpowered and pump back out the back. Like, it's pretty good for an e-foil. It's as light as you're probably going to get an e-foil in this day and age.
Kilos or something, or
it's 18 kilos.
18 kilos.
Yeah. So
just under 50 pounds. That's pretty light.
Yeah. So look, it's, like at the end of the day, you're still running a bigger battery.
45.
The boards need to be so robust because, e-foil is, as everything gets heavier, you got to make the board stronger because as you put it on the ground, like all of that stuff. So it all sort of, concatenates the weight. So yeah, playing around with lots of different ideas for the motor. We haven't locked it off yet. I think the engineers wish I had locked it off, but I'm just trying to push so we just get that ultimate, there's plenty of people coming out into the assist market. I get it. I'd rather, as frustrating as it is, I'd rather just be that little bit different and just aim for that highest performance as we can, and just nail it from the get-go.
You can launch something for the first time once, right?
Exactly. Yeah, let's start off having it not feel like a Gen 1 product, So there's nothing wrong with that way of doing it. Like Foil Drive killed it with their Gen 1 and they did massive improvements to their Gen 2. Like, credit to them. They've already launched, with the Jet.
Us all riding foil assist, right? Like, we'd all be sitting here talking about, we wouldn't be talking about foil assist. We'd be talking about all the other things we were doing before before we got our hands on these things. And I mean, it totally changed my last season. This whole last season has been probably 60% of my time has been on the foil assist because, I mean, the amount of wave time and also riding bigger waves and all the things that you talked about today, it's just amazing what adding some power to your board allows you to do.
It's so good. Yeah, you really get used to it. Like, it's
but the whole time I'm constantly thinking like, yeah, I'm ready for the next gen. Like, where is this going to be? Who's coming out next? Where is this going to end up? Because you see the potential. You're like, I am on just a clunky Gen 1 piece, right? I mean, there's no doubt everybody's Gen 1's like that. It's impossible not to be to get to market quick. And also it's just like all the time it takes to like engineer through all the problems. So yeah, very exciting to see where this is all going.
Yeah. There'll be more and more tech. There'll be people strapping batteries to their back and building good battery packs and, you know, like get the weight off the board. Now, that has its own problems. You know, there'll be pros and cons.
The old battery fanny pack.
Didn't I send you that?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Duotone had
Duotone,
like
yeah.
Yeah, I saw like I don't even know where I saw it, but it's got like a backpack with a harness,
Yep.
and cables running up, and I sent a meme to the foil drive chat with a dog like drowning a guy like this, and I was like, my battery on my back, and the dog's just holding him underwater. Sorry,
Yeah,
I thought it was hilarious.
yeah. So, you know, look, there'll be lots of crazy ideas out there. Some of them will stick, some of them won't. You know, it's all super exciting.
I mean, the more people trying to innovate, the cooler it is. And there's going to be
Absolutely.
people that are going to buy into any of those products just because of accessibility, promotion, or what they think is cool. Like you talk to somebody about one product or the other, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing," and someone else thinks this is amazing. You know, and
Yep.
like that's exactly
Absolutely.
why we have to.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see that, you know, you guys are really, you're obviously a pretty high performance rider. You're working with Bennett's, like everything about what you're doing is pushing to that kind of, because you can't design for a beginner rider, an intermediate rider, an advanced rider, and an elite rider with the same product. Like it's impossible. And so you have to pick one. And for people who are, you know, in that advanced to elite level in the sport, or even progressive, like intermediate, it's just, you don't even get a chance to get on the gear you should be on, right? Because you'd be so bogged down. And that's kind of where efoils were, right? Like they're very much about the beginner experience. And so it's cool to see you guys pushing to that level, because there's always a little bit more you can squeeze if you're willing to compromise, right? And if the compromise is always towards performance, then we're going to end up with this product that like is going to just push the sport forward and make it look like what we've done over the last 2 years and pushing the sport forward is like nothing, right? It's going to be getting deeper on bigger waves, and it's just going to be awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
And look, the gear. Yeah, look, I 100% agree. And look, our top priority is always performance. And if we can squeeze that performance down into the lower end without sacrificing that top end, then I reckon we've done, you know, like that's always a massive win for me. So,
and your ability to change out these boards, right? Like, I mean, just by being able to add battery pack, like you got so much compatibility opportunities here with the boards and the batteries, because, you know, you can
don't feel like you're so stuck into one system.
Exactly.
You know?
Like you can trade up to a bigger board, because, you know, especially when you talk about the amp mast, you know, or the Flite Mast or whatever, when you put that thing on and you can put the 4 batteries in and you put that on a six board or whatever you're talking about, I mean, that does become extremely beginner friendly, right? Whereas you can like tune it
100%.
down on a smaller board, and, you know, obviously that's what you guys are riding.
Yeah. Look,
Cool.
absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Sorry.
I'm excited. So when should I book my flights to come down and pick up my board that I'll be buying?
You didn't hear it from me, but I'd probably aim for somewhere around June.
All right.
That's not bad.
Fingers crossed. Got to. Well, we're fortunate off the back of Flite. We've got worldwide distribution already sorted. You know, like all those things that, you know, like we're, you know, as hard as the engineering's been and all the challenges we've had and how hard we're aiming. You know, we've already got sales teams sorted. We've already got, you know, worldwide distribution, like all that sort of stuff. You know, it comes easy to us because we've done it for quite a while, which is awesome. So,
yeah,
really good, you know, from the fact of, you know, getting into America and Europe and all that sort of stuff.
So production, I mean, obviously, like a lot of probably excitement about this product coming out, like, you know, obviously like meeting factory schedule and demands, right? Like you guys, your production schedule, like, do you guys feel like you're going to have a good bit of inventory when you guys launch?
Not as much as I'd like, but we should be able to catch up hopefully pretty quickly. So, and then, you know, it's a nice way of seeing the demand. There is a lot of excitement out there. Sometimes it's hard when you're in it yourself and you get caught up in it. And, you know, it's the new kid on the block. You know, you've got the Adam Bennett's effect. You know, we've got some good team riders coming on board. You know, like I can rock up anywhere, and, you know, as soon as, you know, I pull it out of the car, they see that, you know, green board or green dot on the mast, and people just literally come running down the car park and the beach. Like, is that a FLITELab? And I'm like, how did you get this? And I'm like, oh, so yeah. And then you get stuck in the back of your car with pumping waves.
Well, and you know, a lot of the stuff with these things, it's all about getting it into the hands of the right people, like you're saying, right? Like I think something we notice a lot with new gear coming in is like we get a few, we ride it, and it's just this constant. You're just turning on new people every day, right? I mean, with the foil assist specifically, you know, I think we've really seen it grow over the last year because it's hard to kind of make that commitment and purchase, but as soon as you start seeing your homie riding it and you see the sessions they're getting, and you get to touch it and feel it. It's just like that. You're like, I don't give a shit what this costs. Like this has to be in my arsenal, right?
100%. Like it's so community driven, this industry, and I love it. Like I really do. And you just see it time and time again. Like, you know, when I was down in Torquay, everyone was on Lyft. You know, like it's just what everyone was on. Like once one person buys it, I probably was a little bit guilty of that because I was one of the first, and you know, and then I'm like, just give me it. You got to ride this. You got to ride this, and then you know, suddenly everyone's driving back from their session at the beach, and you know, begging with their wife to buy a new foil. And then up here, you know, we had the same with F1 where, you know, like the whole of Watergoes was suddenly on F1 because Adam Bennett was riding it, you know, a couple of years ago. And then it just keeps cycling like that. So you see these little pockets where, you know, obviously someone in the community is quite influential and, you know, it's getting it in those hands of people. And, you know, hopefully they froth on it as much as we do. And, you know, they just go, you got to ride this foil. So we're really worried about that. Hoping to get, you know, a little bit of inventory in the near future before launch and just get it to some third party reviewers and just get, I love honest, you know, like, I love honesty. I love people. Okay. Noted. Top of the list. So, yeah, it's just getting it out there. So, you know, like we're rushing into production, we're rushing to build the inventory, we're rushing to get it on ships and get it out there, you know, and on planes and that. So,
awesome, man. Awesome.
Hopefully it all goes smoothly. So,
I mean, I message the Flite rep in the US like every 3 days. Yeah, I'm like, hey, got any more tidbits for me? He's like, he's just so vague. Oh, you know, and I'm like, what's the weight? What's the price point? Like, when are they coming out? Like, I'm like, he's like, I'll talk to you next week, Dylan. You know, it's like, he's like, and it's like, oh, and then
he's just
one day
reeling it in.
He was at the boat show and he FaceTimed me and he's like, hey, I've got the board here, and I'm like, yeah, but what is it? Like, can you show me? He's like, I gotta go, and I was like, no, mother.
It's like less is more, man. Less is more.
Yeah.
Teased it out earlier. We've
teased it for too long. No, we've teased. You know, anyway, look, it's just what happened.
It's super exciting. Like, I mean, because I've been thinking about what it is and you know what's coming and who it's for, because that's all that goes through my head. Because I want it for my shop, I want it for my people, I want it for my customers, I want it for me, and I need it for Walt so he gets off my back. But like hearing you explain it and how compatible it is and what you're able to use it for, I mean, way more excited than I was, which is, I was super excited already. And I love the idea of the fart board, but now that you can use it, sorry.
You gotta lean into the fart thing. It's fine. It's a flow.
No, I'm kidding.
No, it's an elegant product, man.
No, super excited. That is like what you explained and what you guys have going on and what you've gone through and how you can change it up and the compatibility of it between the assist and the jet board and I mean, it's insane. It is insane. That is extremely exciting.
I'm pretty pretty happy to have it in the back of my van. Like it's a nice tool to have in the back of the van, that's for sure.
So
and
a couple of done, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go. No, you go.
I was gonna say, when you get done with this whole journey, right? Like you've now put probably 5 years of just nonstop design and bring your product to market. Are you gonna take a little break and breathe for a little bit and or you just right back at it on Gen 2, Gen 3?
Not my style.
Not your style. You're like, you're going to go until you're completely burned out, and then you're going to go build spaceships or something.
No, not about that. No, I think I'm in foiling for a while, that's for sure, because I can't see myself getting bored of this. No, I'm already planning the next roadmap, so, you know, 2026. And future stuff. So, you know, just want to keep on top of it.
Okay, so I think you have to. My partner now about how much money I'll be spending over the next few years. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry. No, look, it's more about people just enjoying themselves out there. Like that is
Yeah,
my number one.
100%.
You know, like if people are out there getting more waves than they've ever caught, or they're getting up in lighter wind, and you know they're just getting more ride time, that is just the number one goal for me.
Yeah.
You know, just that's what I want. And you know, I think I've been like that my whole life anyway. Just you know, whatever gets me out in the water, whatever it takes. And also just get away from crowds. Like I just, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm a friendly guy and I love being out there with a few people, but being out there with 50 people is not my jam. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't love the crowds, and that's why I was never a surfer. You know, that's just
yeah,
and being a kiter, everyone was so friendly, and then being a foiler, it's just so inviting.
yeah,
And that what you just said, like trying to make it as easy as possible for the people, you know, and as convenient as possible. And that's what I
absolutely.
try to do in my shop every day. Is like someone comes in and I really try to see what would fit them and what kind of brand they would need or what kind of foil or how they're going to get into foiling. What's the easiest way to go through this as painful, like it's
Yeah,
going to be painful anyway, you know, like there's a learning curve to foiling. Like there is no easy, like
no,
straight cut, but you've got to enjoy that process. And how is it going to be the easiest, you know, to proceed through that, which is, I mean, really well put.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about, you know, what we're doing now and how we're using, you know, motors to assist our foiling is that it's changing your progression curve, right? Because you just talked about it. Like that's the cool thing about foiling is that it's so hard and there's so much to learn and so much growing. But a lot of that comes on the back of when you're proning, you're catching 10 waves in a session. And for the
yeah,
first 6 months, like you're on foil for like 3 seconds at a time. And, you know, by adding these other tools, it's just going to allow people to enter the sport and make like, you know, it's really cool to be in the sport from the beginning, like we've all been, but the journey is difficult, right? Because we're learning on like prototype gear and like it's this hard evolution. Whereas like people are going to be able to come into the sport and in one season have like the same amount of wave riding time that we probably spent 5 seasons to get to, right? And so that like speeds up progression, which, you know, at that point that like that's when the sport gets fun, right? When you stop having to be so stressed about like every little nuance of the foil and you're actually tuning in and getting to like surf a wave the way you see it or perform the way you kind of see it in your mind, especially if you come from a surf background or something like that. And I think these tools are going to just totally change the learning curve for folks if they're able to adapt to them.
yeah, 100%. I get, yeah, absolutely nailed it. And it's great. Like when I get out there, I've even, you know, like I take beginners out and I take them out in the amp. People, I think, especially Flite, I think in the early days, they were like, oh my God, this is just going to, you know, like, I'll just be able to learn proning. And I'm like, it's not a magic bullet. Like you've still got to learn to pop to your feet. You've still got to, you know, learn all that. It's not like e-foiling. Like e-foiling, you get everybody up in 15 minutes. And it's awesome for that. It's awesome. Like if I was to teach someone foiling nowadays, I'd do literally go and grab an e-foil and go, let's go
Yeah,
e-foiling first, learn how to control the foil and then, you know, move across. But then I've just had some huge success, you know, like when you're not dropping down that breaking wave and trying to take off, like you're getting into such a fatter wave, you just got that little bit longer time to get to your feet. And then when you get up, you don't have this rush of
no, it's
speed on the foil.
crucial.
You're on a
Yeah.
fatter wave. So it definitely helps the journey. And then also just paddling around and not getting tired, all that sort of stuff. It's funny because, you know, like not long into my first prototype, I tore my rotator cuff snowboarding. And then it was that whole
Snowboarding
like,
will get you, man.
yeah, to get you. You know, it's funny because then I actually had to spend 6 months on the amp board because I couldn't paddle a prone. So it was literally going out there and just, you know, boosting into everything. And then, you know, like I've had so many guys DM me and just go, oh my God, I can't wait for this thing. I can't paddle anymore because my shoulders are trashed. You know,
Yeah.
they're hit 50 and, you know, like they've worn their shoulders out. So they're just like, oh, this is just going to be absolute gold. And it's also, you know, the e-bike thing where you're like, everyone thinks that, you know, the e-mountain bike riders are just going to get fat, but it's like, no, they just ride more kilometers because they can, you know, so,
Yeah.
you know, like I still
Yeah,
paddle
that's what
around.
everybody
I'm
was
still,
saying about foil drive too. It's like, oh yeah, you're just gonna get fat. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm surfing my balls off like
yeah,
nonstop for an hour straight instead of just sitting in the water waiting to catch a wave. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
totally different. Now I need to hit the gym more because your upper body, you're not using your upper body as much. But I think that you
yeah,
know, it's not. It's about how you apply the tool, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like you can't look at somebody who rides a motocross bike and be like, oh, he's lazy.
All he's doing is
yeah,
this,
All
you
he's
know,
doing is
yeah,
this. Be like, well,
actually.
yeah. No, no, absolutely, absolutely. So no, they're all good tools. You know, I always say respect the lineup. You know, use the tools for what they are. Same goes even for foiling. Like we've got a really, really good group. Water goes here. There's probably 25 of us on the WhatsApp group. They all rip up here. It's crazy, the talent. Like we're the first to pull up a foiler. Just don't go so close to the surfers. Like we're getting more waves than them. Just give them the space. I call surfers in all the time. I'll be on a wave from out the back, and I'm just like, come on, come in. I'll pull off and either paddle back out, pump back out, or catch the wave behind. Like, I just don't think your bucket is just going to be filled so much more. So just like I'm always that, like I've had a ball every single day and the surfers are there battling it out. So, just give everybody space. Like it's just what everyone needs. And then, it just takes that to the next level. Like use it to give people space.
100%.
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges we're going to face as we go forward with this stuff, right? It's not a big deal right 100%. Now because so few people have it. But it quickly, it's something we've noticed with Foil Assist is that, like, you're going to be in the same area, obviously working different sections, catching stuff further out. But like even just going up and at the start of the session, like say, hey, pull on to anything, I'll get out of your way. Like you have priority and, keep your distance and make sure that at least there's that communication where they understand that you're not coming in there to steal their waves. Because there is such a feeling of scarcity in surfing, right? So if we get as foilers into a surf lineup where we're getting 50 waves and they're fighting for 1 or 2, and then we put them in a position where they can't paddle into that wave they wanted, it's a disservice to both communities, right? Because it's making us look bad and it's creating this apprehension around foiling that doesn't need to be there. Because like, wouldn't it be rad if like that inclusiveness and that frothiness that we experience in the wind sports and the foiling community just permeated water sports? And I think that like it's going to take us all being very thoughtful about how we use these rad products and make them feel more inclusive to folks instead of just like kind of like driving more of a wedge between surfers and foilers.
No, 100%. And so many foilers, I think, are on the same page.
Right.
You're saying some good stuff. I'm surprised.
I know, it's surprising me.
Yeah. Chris.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, we could just stay here all night. You have so many products. We should have broke this into like 5 podcasts. Like we were jumping onto your foils, and I was like, I don't want to jump to foils because like I'm pretty sure I've got at least 50 more questions about the amp board and all those things that you were doing. So I feel like we're gonna have to like run this back after the launch or something,
Yeah. Dude, super stoked that you came on. And,
thanks so much for having me. It was awesome to speak to you guys. I listened to your podcast. I'm playing catch up at the moment. I didn't discover your podcast till, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm behind. I've missed this podcast. And then it's been a mental 12 months. So I'm so behind on all the podcasts at the moment, trying to catch up in my spare time and, spend time with the family. My wife just like knows that I'm just completely foil brained still 6 years later. So she's like sick of it. I got kids as well. Yeah.
How many?
Two. So 11 and a 15-year-old. So
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
mine are young, so I get the feeling.
Yeah. So trying to get them into foiling. I don't think I'll get my daughter across the line, but my son's I get him out in the Efoil occasionally.
Nice.
So, but he just wants to hang with his mates and surf. So, but I'm whatever gets him out there. So
nice.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. So, awesome to speak to you two guys. Really awesome. Love your show. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hopefully,
vice versa, man.
We love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll have to come over and visit.
Yeah, 100%.
Got some great conditions over here in Puerto Rico for sure.
Yeah, no, can't wait.
All right,
awesome,
cheers, boss.
Thanks, guys.
Don't leave yet because I got to stop it and save it. But
yep.
Don't leave yet. But hold on.